as we said, for instant pleasure, and then it wants more and more and more. But the truth of the matter is, the fact is that more is less. Meaning, the more you indulge, the less you enjoy. To maximize your enjoyment, you don't need to gain more contact. You don't need to gain more objects of the world. All you need to do is savor the experience. Let your mind be where your enjoyment lies. But that's not what we do. Let's take an example. While you're eating food, the mind is worrying over what happened during the day. The mind is anxious about what's going to happen tomorrow. As a result, since the mind is not behind the experience of eating, you don't enjoy it. Now, when you don't enjoy it, you think you'll enhance the enjoyment by having more. It doesn't happen. So, the intellect needs to direct the mind to the present experience without allowing it to go all over the place, and then you enjoy, and then you don't need to have more. Just a little is enough. Let's take another example. Suppose you have, let's take the concept of sharing. A person who loves chocolates. Suppose you like chocolates, and you have one slab of chocolate. You have the choice of eating it all up yourself or sharing it with your family members, which means 4. So you have to divide it into 4. It seems as if your enjoyment is going down to 1/4. Right? But your actual experience is, the more you share, the more you enjoy. Because you enjoy at an emotional level, the emotional satisfaction of carrying or sharing whatever you have with your family members or with friends or with anyone for that matter, is so great that it completely removes the pain of reducing your physical enjoyment. But this is something that only your intellect can tell you. Now, the Gita speaks of excellence in every sense of the term. What makes for excellence? In the world today, we are looking all over the place and saying, oh, maybe an IIT, IIM, going to the best business school in the world, maybe the right kind of connections and networking and this, that and the other will help. But the Gita pinpoints on what makes for excellence. And it is really true if you think about it. What makes for excellence is simply sincerity of action. Whatever you do, if you do it sincerely, with your heart and soul, to the best of your ability, that makes for excellence. Second, purity of heart. Swami Ramatirtha said that Swami Ramatirtha was a mathematician. And he said, even to be a good mathematician, you have to have purity of heart. On the face of it, you'll say, what does purity of heart have to do with mathematics? And yet it's true. What do we mean by purity of heart? A person who is completely free of any negative emotions. A person who is totally devoted to even one person in the world becomes automatically free from guile, free from all hatred, free from jealousy, free from anger, and all these that come in the way of your life. And a person who has this purity of heart achieves, you see, the beauty of this is, if you have even one, the other 2 automatically come to you. So these 3 are what make for excellence. And what's interesting to know is that these 3 are well within each human being's capability. And so therefore the Gita says that nobody is disqualified from perfection. You don't need to be literate, you don't need to have extraordinary talent, you don't need anything in the world except what you're born with. And if you make use of what you're born with, which is a body with which to act sincerely, a mind with which to entertain positive emotions, purity of heart, and an intellect with which to think clearly. If you have these three, nobody in the world can take away excellence from you. And so, the next 5 days and the rest of our lives, if that's how you want it, can be dedicated to just obtaining these three. They sound simple, and they are simple actually, but they're very difficult to cultivate because we have impurities in our mind, impurities in our personality. And once you embark on a program of self-purification, then you'll find that these three come to you and you achieve excellence almost effortlessly, without your wanting to, without your applying yourself for it, but you effortlessly gain excellence. Today there is a strain, there is stress. So the 8th chapter says that whatever you think of, you gain that. If you think of the world, you gain the world. If you think of Brahman, God, you gain the state of self-realization. The same principles apply to both. In other words, the effort being the same, you can either gain the world or you can gain Brahman. It's like saying, for the same price that you pay, suppose you go to a showroom that's selling cars, and the salesman there tells you that if you pay X amount, you can get either a Mercedes or a Maruti. This doesn't happen, so don't go looking for a showroom. But suppose it were to happen, do you need time to think about which car to take? No. Automatically you will say, you won't even consider the Maruti, you will say, I'll take the Merc. But when it comes to life, it's the equivalent. In fact, the difference is much more. On the one hand, you gain the world. If you think of the world, you gain the world. Now, it might sound attractive that you're getting, or you'll earn a lot of money, you'll gain celebrity status, you'll earn name, fame and fortune, this, that and the other. But at the end of it, what is it that the world offers you? The 5th chapter puts it beautifully. He says, Yehi samsparshaja bhogaha dukkhayonaya evate. Whatever the world has to offer, however attractive it may seem in the beginning, at the end of the day, it is nothing but dukkha yoni. It gives you sorrow. And you've got to be able to see that. If you don't see it theoretically, sooner or later you'll get hit pretty badly. At least then you must understand that it is dukkha yoni. Dukkha yoni means wombs of sorrow. It gives not just sorrow in the present moment, it keeps on giving sorrow. Adyantavanta kaunteya. It has a beginning and an end. And even if it doesn't give you sorrow, even if it gives you pleasure, it has a beginning and an end. And the last part is the most brilliant part. He says, Nateshu ramate buddhaha. The wise do not revel in it. So, through the verses here, he guides us towards from thinking of the world to thinking of Brahman. Now, life today, let's take a look at what life today is. When you think of the world, what happens? When you think of Brahman, what happens? Life today is what we experience is one of fatigue. Every morning you go to work, every evening you come back after so many hours of work, and what do you say? I'm tired. Many of us say, I'm tired. By the time you get to work, you're tired. And we justify it. How can you not be tired, you say, when I've been stuck in a traffic jam for an hour? Yeah, but for that 1 hour, you're in an air-conditioned car, sitting comfortably. How can you be tired? And then you move to the office, you're sitting in an air-conditioned office, and you come back in the same air-conditioned car again to a plush air-conditioned home. On what basis do you say you're tired? And yet, on the other hand, you find people hanging out of trains and buses, And from the station to their place of work, they have to walk. And yet they have the energy to joke with their fellow passengers. They have the time to, on the way back, they exchange recipes, they do all kinds of things. And they're energetic when they go home, they're full of life, they engage in some, going out, cooking, this, that, and the other. So what makes for fatigue? It's mental stress. Then we are terribly bored. Just the other day, someone came and said, I am sick and tired of the boredom that I experience in life. He says, nothing excites me. Nothing gives me joy. Everything is okay. I have a family, kids, it's okay. I have what people consider as a fabulous job, it's okay, it's boring at the end of the day. So this is intense boredom. The third, the disease of more. However much you have, you're always looking for grabbing more from the world. And all of this leads to stress to such an extent that we find it difficult to sleep, difficult to enjoy life, difficult to enjoy relationships. And in the end, we have this overwhelming sense of emptiness within us, that haunts us constantly. As against this, the Bhagavad Gita promises boundless energy, the energy of a child. I don't know whether you've seen how a child is full of energy. Yesterday we were going past Prabhadevi, and I saw a mother with her child crossing the road. This child was so full of energy that he must have been 3 years old. He couldn't walk across the road. He was jumping and every step. And I watched him because we were at a signal. And I said, if an adult, if we were to do exactly what he was doing from one end of the road to the other, we would be totally tired by the end of it. But he was full of beans. This kind of energy is what the Gita promises us. And this energy comes when you're deeply motivated from within to work, to serve, to contribute. And this leads to a state of exhilaration, cheer. When you wake up every morning looking forward to one more day in your life. This is why all the gods and goddesses in the Hindu pantheon, if you take a look at their faces, they're all smiling. There's nobody sitting there pulling a long face. Except us. Only the human beings are pulling long faces. Then comes contentment. This contentment comes from what they call as kritakritya and kritartha. Kritakritya means the satisfaction, the contentment that comes from having done what you ought to do. That's a fabulous sense of contentment that you have. And this leads to happiness and a sense of fullness. Whatever you have, you see, this sense of fullness or emptiness that you experience has nothing to do with what you have or you don't have. Some people like Sudama had nothing going for them. They were poverty-stricken, and yet they were completely full, paripurna. And on the other hand, you find all of us with so many things that we enjoy in the world, so many things that we have in the world, and yet there is this gnawing sense of emptiness. So it has nothing to do with what you actually physically have, possess, or don't have. It has something to do with your attitude in life. And once you cultivate the positive ideas, the positive attitudes that the Gita is speaking of, all this becomes yours. Now, the last thing we need to learn before we get on to the verses is that the Gita presents the ideas to us, presents the principles to us, but it says, you've got to do it yourself. We in India are so used to tuitions, right? We're so used to notes prepared by the teacher and given. And not just that, ready-made exam papers also given. That we want something that many people say that. People say, oh, why don't you give us something that we can directly apply? You know what that means? It means the person doesn't want to do his homework. And yet, Krishna, when he's speaking to his dear friend Arjuna, whom he wants to help, he's greatly motivated to help Arjuna because he's in dire straits, faced with a challenge that he can't fight. Yet, he says, Uddhared Atmanatmanam, lift yourself by yourself. Meaning, even Krishna couldn't help Arjuna. So forget about anyone else helping us. You have to help yourself to the knowledge. You have to think about it, reflect over it. You have to experiment with it in your life, see that it works, and integrate it into your system. So don't expect ready-made answers. Don't expect pre-digested food. You've got to do the hard work. With this now, we begin with the first 2 verses of chapter 8, which is Arjuna's question to